那接下来下一场演讲是邀请丹麦农业学院 Delom 环境管理与地下水讲师 Niels Erik Jespersen。那 Niels Erik 非常令人感动，因为他从早上11点，就是丹麦时间早上4点就上线，他非常认真的听早上的简报跟阅读简报的内容。那这边要特别介绍 Niels Erik， 他是丹麦沼气教科书的撰写人。那他今天会跟大家从农场的角度，如何帮后续的沼气生产跟沼液沼渣的应用做介绍。接下来就请 Eric。 Hi Eric. Eric, could you say something so people at the venue can see you? Eric, you are muted. Your microphone is muted.
I think you unmuted me. You muted me. I'm on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. 这位就是 Eric.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for inviting me to share with you experience from the Danish farmer side on the biogas issue. Yes, and I usually say that biogas is the natural choice because it's everywhere in the ground, in the rumen of all cows and similar animals. And what we do is that when we digest organic material, we basically just extend the lifetime in the rumen of the cow. So basically we just copy that, meaning that we digest the organic material even better than the cow can do in a few days. Next, please. My personal experience comes from my family, as my father started one of the first plants in 1974 as a farm plant based on 40 cows and 40 sows. Next. So it was quite simple and just a few people working with ideas and technology. So it took basically another 30-40 years before it became the industry that Bruno just explained to you it has developed into. So it was a struggle actually to have society accept that this was actually the way forward. But it's nice to see that we succeeded today. Next, please. If we have to look at this from the farmer's perspective, and also considering the carbon footprint, we need to go with the best applied technology in every term, everywhere we can on the farm. And we focus very much on the nutrient management. And in Denmark, we have, throughout the years, we have focused very much on nitrogen, as you will see in the following slides. Many other countries have focused on other subjects like the phosphor or the potassium. But in Denmark, the nitrogen was in focus. Next. So it's about best applied technology, but also best management, both inside the stable and outside the stable. When we talk about inside the stable, it's very much about the design of the stable, how the ventilation and the flooring is made. If we can cool the manure, there will be less evaporation, hence loss of nitrogen. If we reduce the pH through sulfur acid or similar, we will also reduce the evaporation and emission of nitrogen as ammonia into the atmosphere. Also, if we can clean the air through various technologies, also biological filters, that will also reduce. If we put scrapers on the slatted floors, so we are back to what Uno also mentioned, that if we remove slurry manure frequently, as often as possible, that will reduce the odor and likewise the evaporation of nitrogen. Solid floors in stables means less evaporation compared to slatted floors, but technology or design have been very much in favor of the slatted floors. So that's one of the dilemmas we have to face in the future. When we're looking outside the stables in the barns, so it's very much about how we store our slurry and manure. And in this country, as you will see, we demand the storage to be covered to some extent, meaning that most of the slurry tanks will be covered. You'll see that we speak a lot about the slurry, and that's, I think that basically about 80% of all livestock excreta in Denmark will be liquid. It's more easy to transport, and both in farm and from farm to field. So we focus a lot on that also when it comes to the technology. Of course, also if we can separate the slurry, we can reduce the evaporation of nitrogen, and we can also design the nutrients to the segments of the livestock excreta. But if we turn to biogas, it seems to solve most of these issues. So we like to see it as a environmental friendly resource that should be used in the optimal way. So let's go on. So when we look around the world, it's not a new thing. You can find a lot of different designs from around the world on how to make this simple biogas plants. I usually show these to illustrate that it can be made simple, because most of them, the modern plants, they are very complex, very advanced, and it takes professionals to actually deal with it. But old plants like these that works just by gravity, and no pumps, no electricity, no nothing, just nature working it, that illustrates that it can be made simple. I think that there will be more than, the last numbers I saw from India was more than 1 million small plants providing energy for smallholders. So it is a very extended and well-known technology in many parts of the world, especially in the warmer climate. Next. That's a design from China. Next. A bit more advanced with the metal dome. Next. Most of the systems used today would be, if we talk about the simple plants, will be the balloon systems, where you simply cover the livestock manure or the slurry. You cover it with a membrane that collects the methane, so you can pump it and use it for heating or cooking. Next. So one of the questions we always have to ask ourselves is, should it be a farm-based plant, or should it be a central local biogas plant that serves a number of farmers? And we know that the construction costs are quite high when you make a biogas plant. So the bigger you make it, the cheaper the investment per animal or per capita. So what we can do as a farmer, you can either increase the herd size, or you can collaborate somehow with other farmers and just construct a central plant. So what we see today is that most of the new plants would be local plants that serves farmers within a range of 5 to 10 kilometers to make it profitable. Back in the days, we calculated that it could be profitable to build a plant of your own if you had more than 100 cows or equally 300 sows. Today, the numbers are quite higher. So my estimate will be that you need to base it on minimum 1,000 cows or 3,000 sows in order to make it profitable. What we've found out at that time or throughout the years was basically that 1 cow could produce like 1 liter of diesel per day, equal to, or the biogas equal to 1 liter of diesel. So if we use that as a reference when we calculate investment and payback on the plants, it's quite an exact number because we know, as we see right now, that price of energy is going up, so that changes the investment in favor of building more biogas plants. The size of the biogas plants that you want to construct, of course, depends very much on what you want, what the input should be, and how you treat it, and as I mentioned, the energy price. Yes. Yeah. So why should a farmer join other farmers in setting up a biogas plant, or to join an existing plant? So we could say that what are the obligations on the farmer side, and what would be the obligations on the plant side? The farmer will have to, as Bruno also mentioned, to provide the fresh slurry, because it has the highest energy potential. So it should be fresh slurry or manure. We should secure that the dry matter would be quite high, because we all know that water is expensive to get rid of. It's expensive to transport, and there's basically no energy in it, in our systems. So we want to reduce it. I know that in many other countries, the systems are based on flushing of water, flushing through the stables, or in the seasons that the slurry will be with so much rainwater coming in that it will be below what we could call the damage level, and then it could be let directly into the rivers. It's about 6 years ago that South Korea, they banned slurry to be let into the rivers. But before that, it was possible for the Korean farmers to do so. But definitely we cannot expect that to happen in the future. So we want a quite high dry matter content, and we want to avoid the wash water and spillage as much as possible. And of course, we also want to avoid the rainwater or the gray water to go into the slurry, because that's just like very poor, making the product poor. We want the collection of the slurry and the manure should be easy, so it will be the farmer's responsibility to create some easy access to his farm for the trucks to load and unload the livestock excreta. And the farmer should, of course, avoid the antibiotics or similar chemicals that will be hostile to the bacteria, because we are talking live creatures inside the digesters, so we should treat them like that. Also, the return of the digested slurry manure should be quick and easy. Basically, we also need to provide adequate storage for the returned biomass, meaning that in a warmer climate, you can apply the digested biomass almost throughout the year. In our climate, we only have like 5 or 6 months season and can only grow 1 crop a year. So it means that we need to be able to store it for a minimum. Right now, the demand is 9 months. So 9 months storage capacity should be available on all farms. Let's move to the company side, or the biogas plant side. So they should be able to collect the biomass regularly, and they should, of course, be able to pasteurize all the biomass going in, which is one of the essential issues also in Taiwan, and also something that farmers, they are a bit concerned about. If the biomass they get, is it really clean? Is it really free from any pathogen? So pasteurizing is essential. Also sanitizing the trucks and other equipment, so we are absolutely sure that there will be no transmission of diseases or something else. Of course, they need to comply to the legislation when it comes to odor and emissions. They should be able to collect and analyze the samples from each truckload, so the farmer will know exactly how much nutrients was removed from the farm and how many nutrients will be returned to the farm. And like that, also keep account of the amounts of tons that will be collected or returned to the farm. And of course, per truckload, know exactly the exact content of nutrients, so we can keep track of everything. And then, of course, also provide information on the expected nitrogen utilization, because that's one of the legal aspects that the Danish farmers have to comply to, that there should be a minimum utilization of the nitrogen in the manure. So the total nitrogen could be like 5 kilograms per ton, and then we should utilize like 70-80% of that in the first year. And of course, all these data that the company should collect should also be available for the farmer, but also for the authorities that need to check on the farmers if they comply to all regulations. Yes. So why? What is the advantage from the farmer side if you join a biogas plant? And that is, of course, that because the substance very often is not only livestock manure or slurry, it's also organic substances from the industry or household waste or whatever. So usually the content of P and K is higher in the digested. Also, the composition of nutrients seems to be better because we know that most of the pig slurry is rich in phosphor, and the cow slurry is rich in potassium. So when we receive digested material from the biogas plant, it's very often a perfect mix of these. That means that you will have a better fertilizer for your fields. Yeah. There will be the product that we get back is pasteurized, so we have less problems like smell. Yeah. Also, the utilization rate is higher, as I mentioned initially, that we extend the rumen of the cow, so we will degrade all the organic material better, meaning that more of the nutrients will be available. That also means that the ammonium that will be produced from the degraded biomass will be more available for the plants when it reaches the soil. Yes, Bruno also mentioned that the digested biomass is usually more liquid, so it means it infiltrates the soil better, and better infiltration also means better utilization. So like that, we will also have a better absorption of the nutrients to the crops. We will have a better mineralization of the nutrients from the biomass, again, because it is already digested. So many advantages speaks in favor of the biogas. And not the least but not last, or last but not least, as we see now, the cost of organic fertilizer or mineral fertilizer is skyrocketing, means that we see very high fertilizer cost, mineral fertilizer costs these days. So that also speaks very much in favor of using the organic fertilizer from the biogas plants. Yes, and last, that if we can apply some of the livestock manure to farms that do not have livestock, then we'll have, on a national level, we'll have a better distribution of nutrients. Yeah. So in this country, it could look typically like this, that there is a truck, a quite automatic truck, that the truck driver, he can unload and load without basically getting out of the truck. So if you click once, you can see that in this case, he will take the slurry from one tank, but before that, he already unloaded digested slurry to the other tank. So in this way, the truck will always go full loaded. Yeah. Then if we look at a biogas plant, this could be a typical one in Denmark. So in this specific one, they have the household waste intake in one side of the plant. It passes pasteurizing before it reaches the digesters. In the other side, they take the other kinds of organic input from various farms and various companies. And also here it will be pasteurized before it reaches the digesters. And if we click twice, we will see the potential in the various substances. And you can see that very good biogas potential will be within the poultry manure, but also the maize silage and the slaughterhouse waste, the intestine. But also like products from the fishing industry is a very good booster for the biogas production. And of course, fat and carbohydrate in general are very good substances to fill in. And yeah, I can say that we have tested almost any kind of organic material since the 1970s. I don't know about newspapers, but they seem to hold a lot of biogas, or a lot of gas indeed. So maybe we should consider to work on the media as well. Next. One more. So is the digested organic fertilizer. You see, I don't like to use the word waste because it's been used too much over the years. We want to consider it a resource. And if we look at the typical slurry cattle or slurry from cattle or slurry from pig, compare it with biogas. You can see in the middle of the table that in general, the slurry from biogas holds a higher level of ammonium, NH4, nitrogen, than both the cattle slurry and the pig slurry. And also the utilization rate of the total nitrogen is higher. So meaning that more nitrogen is available, and it is easier for the crops to actually take hold of this nitrogen. So basically it's a more rich fertilizer to our crops if we do use the biogas. A few pictures of the technology and the design. Many countries, they use steel tanks for storing the slurry. In our country, it's very much concrete, cement-based tanks built by Elements. And in this case, you'll see that the slurry tank has like a cover, a tent on top to avoid the evaporation. And you can see I have changed the word waste into fertilizer because that's how it should be considered. We had in the 90s, we had a campaign targeting the farmers, where we told them that the slurry is gold, actually to convince the farmers that they could very easily increase the utilization of the nitrogen just by simple means. So this campaign was quite successful, but of course it could not stand alone. Next. As I mentioned, we have in this country, there is a legal aspect of minimum 9 months capacity, storage capacity on farm, meaning that every farmer should be able to store 9 out of 12 months production of manure or slurry. Yes. The tank is covered to avoid the evaporation, so we will have less nitrogen going into the atmosphere. But last, we will also avoid the rainwater to go in, and especially like when you have the typhoon in Taiwan, you get a lot of water from the sky. And as we mentioned initially, we don't really want the water to go into our organic resources. We want to keep them separated to reduce the cost and to increase the utilization. So that will be some of the rules that the Danish farmers have to comply to. Some of the application techniques that we can use, these are two, the dribble bar on right and injection in the soil on the left. If you click once, it should become larger. And this was a demonstration that we made in Harbin in the northeast of China in 2016, because the authorities there, they wanted to ban the use of mineral fertilizer. So they needed to test some new technology. So here you have the black soil application. So the slurry is mixed with the soil immediately. On the right, the slurry is placed in lines on top of the field, but also here it should be integrated or mixed into the soil as early as possible. Yeah. Next. So this is the manure, or could be also like semi-liquid solid materials with a dry matter content of about 12 to 35% or even higher. Yeah. Next.
Eric, sorry to interrupt, but you need to speed up.
Yeah, I get closer to the mic. This is when we apply it in the maize. in the crop that is already established. So we can also apply it during the season. Yes. In the old days, we used this broadcasting of the slurry, and it reduced the utilization, meaning that we could only utilize like 10 to maximum 30% of the nitrogen. Next. So from 2006, it was banned because we focused so much on the nitrogen. Yes. If we apply it in the soil, mix it with the black soil, so we can actually reach up to 80–90% utilization of the nitrogen. Yes. The dribble bar, 70 to 75% utilization, and the manure, you can see 20 to 40%. And the reason is that there's a lot of fiber inside, and the fiber just takes longer time to degrade. So we will eventually lose a bit more nitrogen. Yeah. This picture illustrates that the slurry is injected in a wheat crop. It could also be rice, could be any crop. So that also gives a higher utilization of the nitrogen. So technology is very essential when it comes to better utilization. And back to the maize, and that's where we have about 75% utilization as well. Yes. So if we look like from 1985, where we started to focus on environment in Denmark, you can see that the utilization rate of nitrogen actually increased year by year. So today we will be in average more than 60%. So how come? If we click here, there will be some suggestions. Of course, as I mentioned initially, better design of the stables and better storage, also with the cover, better application, also better timing of the application, so it's applied in the season. And of course, the technique we are using, as you saw in the previous pictures. And of course, something that can be difficult to control, but the weather, if we can apply it just before rainfall, that will give a better infiltration and thus a better utilization of the nitrogen. So how did we reach this? Of course, we would say it's about information, it's about education, it's about regulations like the storage capacities, things like that. But it's of course also by support, direct financial support, but also like research and a lot of focus on how to improve the things. Yes, so that means if we take the next, it means that throughout the years we managed to reduce the amount of mineral fertilizer. You can see that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we used a lot of mineral fertilizer in Denmark. But then in the 90s, we had more and more restrictions implemented, like the ones I mentioned. So since then, we have reduced the use of mineral fertilizer by about 2/3. So it means that when restrictions were implemented, it actually changed the behavior of the farmers, but it also motivated the farmers to actually focus a lot more on the nutrients produced on farm. Yeah. So basically, we managed to reduce not only the use of mineral fertilizer, but also the use of chemicals in general. So you can say that the Danish farmers, they became much more environmental friendly throughout the years due to better education and information, and of course also better technology. And all of that is actually just in favor of the biogas plants, because that just supports all what we have done since 90. Next. So the last slide is just like an overview of what have been achieved. And if you click, you can see that we managed to reduce the greenhouse gases by 20% so far, the loss of nitrogen by 56%, the surplus of P was removed completely, almost. But in the same period, we actually managed to increase the agricultural production by 35%. And also, like I mentioned, the mineral fertilizers and the chemicals. So that is, you could say, it was a success story that we managed to reach this. But I'm sure that the biogas plants and a lot of the new plants being built is one of the reasons why we have reached these goals. But of course, you could also turn it around and say that the farmers, they were really bad before the 1980s, or they were just not really much concerned about nutrients. And I think that's the trouble in many countries around the world, that mineral fertilizer is up today quite cheap. So it's easier just to buy a mineral fertilizer instead of considering the nutrients produced on farm. But the biogas definitely speaks into this. So hopefully in the future, a lot more countries will be on this level. Yes, I think that was basically my words for now. I know that the conditions in Taiwan are quite different from conditions in Denmark. You have a limited land available, and we have appropriate land available for receiving the organic fertilizer from the biogas plants. So it's a bit more complicated in Taiwan, but I think it should be manageable to actually distribute the nutrients in a better way than it is done now. So let's take the discussion afterwards. So thank you for now.
Thank you, Eric.